Hello. I'm seeing some beautiful umbrellas, which I'm happy to see, and we're thankful to be in the shade. Thank you for sitting in the sun. I am Jill Lyons. I lead operations at Maximum Effort. Maximum Effort is Ryan Reynolds' creative engine. We kind of sit at the intersection of brand and sport and entertainment. And I'm so thrilled to be hosting today's panel. I'm joined here by two incredible marketers, two leaders of today's boldest and most innovative brands, Liquid Death and Duolingo. Right here to my left, love the energy. I've got Dan Murphy, who's SVP Marketing at Liquid Death. He's played a leading role in establishing the beverage brand as this iconic disruptor that we all know and love. And then over here is Kelsey Dempsey, social media content creator at Duolingo. She's part of a small team with an outsized impact, tapping into cultural conversations at record speed for that infamous green owl. So thank you guys for being here.
Great to be here.
Yes, thank you for having us.
So I want to start with, we're talking about culture hacking. What does it mean for a brand to participate with outsized impact in the culture? I think Duo, I'm on a 266-day streak on Italian, and Liquid Death, Dan was nice enough to pack a roadie for me, so we are drinking on the job. Cheers. But I want to start with the work, and I'll start with you, Dan, because I love that you said when we were talking before that you guys really market Liquid Death like an entertainment company. What does that mean? And what are some recent work that comes to mind that really showcases that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, our premise is really simple. People hate ads, so we don't make them. We try to put content out that wins the internet for the day, that competes with anything else in your feed. We're not the first to invent this. There's other famous beverage companies that have done it. Monster and Red Bull, most notably. But their lane was action sports. Red Bull famously dropped somebody from outer space, and it was something everyone tuned into because it was that cool. We're doing the same thing, but again, we're just trying to make you laugh. So we satirize advertising, we partner with interesting, fun brands and celebs, and we try to put something out that press has to write about, and you want to share with your friends.
I love that. I love that. What recently, personal fan of Kegs for Pregs. I thought that was so funny, and love that. I think.
Let's take a look at it.
Kylie, Kelsey, are you drinking?
I've had so many of these today. I wish they would make a huge keg.
Kegs for Pregs, you drinking for two. Kegs for Pregs, so throw back a few. Kegs for Pregs, you drinking for two. Kegs for Pregs, so throw back a few.
That's right, Pregs. Liquid Death is taking my favorite water from actual mountains and putting it in a limited edition keg. All for me and my unborn child. Drink up.
Kegs for Pregs, you drinking for two.
Oh my God, your water just broke.
Whoopsies.
Kegs for Pregs, you drinking for two.
So next time you're pregnant, reach for an ice-cold Liquid Death mountain water or get a limited edition personal keg. Why, yes, officer, I have been drinking. For two.
Love that. Love that.
Some of the strategy and thinking behind that, we know from internal research, at least a third of the people who have heard of Liquid Death still think we're a beer. So much as we did in the Super Bowl spot that we aired this year, we needed to drive home, we're absolutely not a beer. We had a partnership already established with Kylie Kelsey. We were the sponsor of her pod for the month of March and thought this would be a cool thing to drop around St. Patrick's Day. And it got press and shares and views and did what we wanted it to do.
I love it. That's incredible. Now, and I think sometimes brands think that they have to kind of do something big and bold, and maybe there's a hit once a year, once every 2 years. So you guys are kind of consistently doing it, and I think the work that is happening at Duo on the internet is wildly crazy. First of all, my 10-year-old daughter was like, "You're going to be talking to the owl?" She thought that the owl was going to be here today. So you've kind of created just these characters and this brand that is so alive. I would love to hear a bit about, what's exciting you about the work that you guys are doing at Duo?
Absolutely, and you can tell your daughter I do wear the owl suit sometimes. We roll up our sleeves whenever we need to. I think one of the most exciting parts about creating content at Duolingo is you never have the same day. We are always coming up with new ways to show up as a brand, and whether that's following a recent trend or showing up to a Charlie XCX concert with 20 other Duo heads, we are consistently finding ways to surprise our users and our audiences, because we understand that attention spans are very short. So I can talk briefly about this. So that's me and 20 of our employees at Duolingo. So we drove 5 hours up to Charlie XCX's open night in Detroit and brought in these like little bags filled with these masks. And we put them on during 2 parts of the show. And I think things like this are just kind of the beginning for us and how we can find new ways to show up as Duo, and also with our characters too. We're constantly cooking up surprises, even with our recent mascot's death and also resurrection, which we can talk more about in another question too.
Oh my God, I love that. Yes, the death of Duo. Like, actually, let's go there for a second.
Yeah.
It's really hard to kill your, you kill your babies, right? We talk about that in creativity all the time. Like, tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, definitely. And I think one of the most interesting parts about this is we didn't think people would necessarily care that much to the extent that they did. When we first shared our announcement of the owl, there was just an unwavering amount of response, and we were not expecting that at all. We thought it was more of something that we wanted to do more with our characters, specifically Duo, is tell these stories and create this lore for not only Duo but our other characters on the app. And yes, there's me and my manager Zaria on the day that we killed the bird and went to the parking lot to watch Duo get hit by a truck. And after 5 years of attempting to get Dua Lipa's attention, it finally worked. So
Yes.
Duo's always trying to seek that attention, and faking the death was really what did it in. So yeah.
That's incredible. I think that's a great segue into the culture of it all, right? There's a difference between internet culture and pop culture. How do you guys kind of navigate, and I'll toss this to either one of you to start, maybe Dan, what is your role to play? What's a brand's role to play? What's the difference between internet culture, pop culture, and just, a big brand moment?
I think it's pretty blurred, right? And again, we look at ourselves as an entertainment company as well as a beverage company. It's so important for us to just put some fun content out there.
Yeah.
The model we use is a little bit like Saturday Night Live. They've been around for 50 years. They've had that longevity because all they are doing is bringing new people on their stage and riffing on something in pop culture or something current. And we feel we can do the same thing. That's why we bring on, strategically, different brands that have new audiences we want to reach, different celebrities for the very same reason. And as long as we're making you laugh and getting press to write about it for free and people to share it for free, we're doing our job.
Yeah, I love that. Kelsey, what about you?
Yeah, I love how there's kind of a blurred line between pop culture and internet culture, and I think both shape the way that each, play out. I think with pop culture, I think about it a lot as different events and big things that are happening in media. So who watched White Lotus this past weekend, or what celebrities are on the Met Gala? And I think internet culture is the way that we as an audience react to it and talk about it. And so I think about it in the way of what people are saying on my TikTok For You page, or what vernacular, what type of things are people talking about, or trends that are happening. And I think that as a brand, you have to think about these big moments and how to, bring your perspective and authenticity into that. And I think that, like Dan said, it is pretty interchangeable, and we just want to find a way to be entertaining, but also not just insert yourself with the trend. I think it has to come from a place of a strong idea and also, an authentic place and time for it. And I think with Duo, we've had those moments, specifically with the TikTok ban, when we started to see a lot of people making content about going from TikTok to RedNote and learning Mandarin, and that alone led us to create this moment for ourselves because we saw what was happening in internet culture. People were talking about this big moment, and so we as a brand felt called almost up to the stage to react to it. So this was actually one of my favorite tweets I've ever created, and it was actually coming from a comment on a TikTok video, and it flopped. The comment got 0 likes, and I held on to this, and I was like, no, there's some potential here, and it was one of my most viral tweets that I think I'm really excited about. But I think it really plays into that moment of there's this thing happening, what people are saying about it. We felt that we had something to say, and so this is what we made. And so, yeah, and also this is me and my manager filming at the airport together.
I love the behind-the-scene look at like who's behind the owl.
Let me interject and just say,
Yeah.
I also want to underscore before we move on to a new topic,
Yeah.
that we represent 2 very different strategies, both successful. There's probably nobody better than Duolingo in hopping on trends quickly, being there each and every day, filling the feed. That's not what we do at Liquid Death. We're very much the Mr. Beast approach, where we're dropping kind of 2 big moments a month, but importantly, like a metronome. For years, we've done 1 or 2 a month consistently that we think are going to be that win the internet bigger moment, and that's our approach.
Yeah. Yeah, at Max Effort we say, brands are like characters, right? So we really treat all of our content like the movies, right? Because the consumer, just focus group of yourself, like we don't know the difference these days, right? As to what space we're looking in, whether it's a film, a movie, an ad, a TikTok, like people just want to be entertained. That's kind of our brand ethos at Max Effort. And, that opportunity for the right brand at the right time in the right space is going to look different for everybody, and one example that I've got from Max Effort is when we put Jake from State Farm next to Donna Kelsey at the Chiefs game the week after Taylor Swift game. And like that came out of a different brainstorm for a different client. And it's like, oh my gosh, everyone's talking about the Taylor Swift moment. Who's Donna sitting next to next weekend? And that kind of was like, oh, aha, And, but again, right brand, right character, right place, right time. I'd be curious as to your thoughts on like, if you guys flip-flop strategies, right? Like, does that work, or is there really some importance in being authentic, leading the witness, right?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely could, but you have to structure your team a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Again, we're set up like a writer's room. We've mirrored the best processes of Hollywood and places that make comedy. We have actual stand-up comedians helping us, writing us, doing punch-up. And that's a different process to get to 2 kind of bangers, as we hope, a month, than the team that needs to be constantly scouring, out with the costume, out with content every day, and it's more of a volume play.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
To add to that point, I do think it is possible, but I think that your team has to be flexible and also be willing to experiment and being okay with flopping. I think that at Duolingo especially, our bread and butter is the day-to-day trends that we're seeing and creating content, but we're also trying to experiment more also with the writer's room and trying, different skits and different original content for our channels. And I think what we're trying to do right now is create that bread and butter that keeps us consistent and do what we know and best, but also being okay with and being willing to try new things, even if it doesn't work. And we're currently seeing some success with it, and it's really exciting to see what resonates and what doesn't. But it's all about that testing and seeing what works.
And you can kind of only be as creative as the top person that can say no. So if legal is wielding the sword, or if the CEO used to be the CFO and doesn't get it, it becomes difficult to go for an entertainment-first approach.
Yeah. Let's talk about that for a minute, like stretching, right? Because, you obviously have a role to play, and I think, depending on your where you stand listening to this, you might say, oh my gosh, you guys are doing like totally radical stuff that I could never do at my brand, or that would never fly, right? How do you push the needle on pushing the word? I mean, we'll get into kind of the how of it, but really talking about like, how do you dip your toe into the water of trying to expand? Hey, we might be able to play here.
Yeah, I mean, people that think Liquid Death material or content is risky, I just don't get it. We're not doing anything above PG-13. Look at the top shows, look at the top movies. They are so much further out than what we put out. We're just unique for a brand because most brand content is so boring, so mild. So I think the far riskier thing is putting out boring content, spending millions of dollars in media to push it out, and it doesn't move the needle. That's a massive risk.
One thing that Duolingo that we talk about a lot is you don't know the line until you've crossed it. And so there are times when you're assessing something that's maybe risky, and sometimes there are times where, oh, not so sure about this, let me bring in some leaders to kind of assess the risk of this. So we ensure for our content that it comes from that perspective. But I think one of the biggest things is to have a circle of trust within your team and to have the right stakeholders involved, whether it's legal or whether it's upper leadership, to be aligned on the content that you're making. And if, for example, if you're at a brand where maybe there's not a lot of room for that, I think it's trying things one step at a time, trying something maybe a little more outside of the comfort zone and then going a little further and seeing how far you can get until you get to that point of that full creative fulfillment that you might want if you want to go more more risky, if you will.
Yeah, and to add on that, just a little pro tip. I mean, we don't have to worry about it. We're creatively led. But for organizations that aren't, meet people where they're at. Speak the financial language to a CFO. Say, if we believe this is going to have this much earned media impact, which translates to that many dollars, that affects mid and lower funnel efficiency. Put it on a spreadsheet. Maybe you believe it, maybe you don't, but meet them where they're at. Talk to legal. Find something that happened in the world that might be somewhat similar and say, look, they're still in business. We can do this. And again, like Kelsey said, maybe it's small bets and small steps in the beginning, but if you do it consistently enough, I truly believe it's the only way to market. Earned has to be the tip of the spear. And it doesn't have to be comedy, that's our lane. It doesn't have to be action sports. You could be educational, earnest, pick a topic. But if you're not putting something out that people really want to look at and consume, you cannot get into their heads. Their phones are out if you're on linear. If you're in social, you're a 200 millisecond flick away. You're fast forwarded through podcasts. It actually has to be something people want to consume.
Well, and you bring up a good point that sometimes your first audience is your internal stakeholders, right? And so getting the company on board, getting whatever the barrier is, whether it's the finance team or the board, I think it's and we see that a lot as an agency relationship where we talk to lots of brands, but understanding that sometimes that power and the first people you have to talk to convince is that internal team, right? And so I like the idea of kind of testing and learning. I always love a sprint, let's do a 2-week sprint on it and see, because it's a low risk way or a way to de-risk kind of trying something different or new. And it's in 2 weeks, if we don't like it, or in 30 days, let's go back to the other way of doing things, So some of that language, and I think that's a good segue into what I really love as a producer brain and an operator brain is the how. How do you get this work done? And I'm so interested and intrigued by your writer's room approach. Could you just talk a little bit more about what that system or what that process looks like?
Sure, yeah. So at Liquid Death, everything that we put out, and like I said, it's at least 2 major moments a month, plus everything else to support the business, is 100% in-house, from concept through to production. And we're talking small team. The people coming up with the ideas is 4 people. We have a very small design team. We have an in-house production company we call Death Machine. That's 4 or 5 people. Small, efficient. We don't have a brand book because we've had no attrition. Everyone understands what the brand is, understands where Liquid Death doesn't go as a character or as a universe. And we have some supporting folks, the producery types, but really that's it. And we look at what we need to do from a brand perspective, educating people, getting into new verticals. We're in sparkling flavors now. We have been for years. It's like a healthy soda replacement. We learned last year a lot of people are drinking that because it's low sugar, low calorie, and they're replacing soda. Strategic springboard to say, okay, now we want to push that message out there. How can we do it in a funny, hilarious way? Similarly with iced tea, low calorie, kind of the right amount of caffeine. Okay, we could do that. Who are partners that are interesting audiences for us to penetrate? That's why, with Kylie Kelsey, we were looking at millennial moms. Couldn't be anybody better. An actual, soon-to-be millennial mom. So the process starts with some of the same inputs you might have, brief or strategic goals. We just go about it a lot different. It goes to a creative crew that's truly a safe space writer's room. We don't have the producer people trying to figure out how to get it done, or strategists or account people or agency people in that room, because we don't have really those people. They come with a pure idea, and then the rest of the org births it, figures out how to get it done quickly. It's kind of that simple.
And were you guys structured like that from the jump, or has that kind of evolved over?
Yeah, no, I mean, we're a startup. We really have kind of had the same team for the last 5 years from the inception. We've added a few more folks in the capacity sense to produce it, to get it out in the world, but yeah, that's always been the way it is. We've augmented this comic ambassador team, these working, headlining comedians that'll pop in and do punch-up. And I think importantly, when they come into the writer's room, usually by like Zoom, right, they see people like them. We have staffed it with actual funny people because that's our North Star, not agency people that did a mild ad. These are people that wrote for The Onion, that had an Adult Swim show, that have written for TV comedy. I think in our case, it's important that the broader world paid you because you were funny. We've had a couple people in the brand space that can help corral us into deliverables, but otherwise that's the way it is.
Well, and it's so interesting, coming from like my background, I started in TV production, I shifted into advertising. I'm now kind of at this intersection of both of those worlds, and seeing how much, like we've been talking about, the worlds are colliding, right? And we say all the time, like, good creative can come from anywhere. And so I don't think you have to be limited to be, like, how many people are like marketers in the audience? And how many people are not marketers but in a different role? See, yeah, there's a lot of hands. I mean, creativity can come from anywhere, and I think when you can design with that in mind, I should say you limit yourself if you're saying, oh, we got to have, the traditional agency creative team working on the ad for the Super Bowl.
I'll just say one thing, and then we got to hear from Duo and how they do it. Creativity can come from anywhere is kind of insidious as an organizational principle. Because there are people that are professional at this, that are better than others at this, that have honed a career at this. It isn't just a slot machine that every idea is equally as good and some hit and some don't. No, there's a real method to the madness. But in an organization, you often get folks, maybe in finance, maybe in legal, maybe in the C-suite, that think, I'm sure, I watch ads, I have a perspective, I like that, I don't like that, but don't really have the much deeper history and understanding to know what works, might not be as in tune with culture. But when do you see the marketing department in somebody's Excel spreadsheet saying, I want to mess with your pivot table? It's only one direction.
That's great. Noted. Kelsey, what about you guys? How are you guys structured over at Duo? What are the systems? What do you love? Like, what tools are you using? How are you cranking out that so quickly, right?
We're a very quick social team, and I think one thing that's really unique about us is we are a very small team that works coincidentally with other parts of marketing. So we have our in-house content team who makes a lot of the filming in our office and day-to-day content creation, but we also have a creative team who works on a lot of our bigger campaigns. So we recently did an April Fool's campaign, and as a content creator myself, it's fun to be kind of in tangent with both. So I'm a part of the day-to-day side where all the trends are happening, but also we're at these shoots filming content based off of trends and different things that we're seeing. But specifically with our content team, it's about 5 people. We have me and 2 other creators. We have social media manager Zaria, and we have a social producer to help us, who is on the ground getting us props or whatever we need. But I think one thing I love about how tight-knit we are is every piece of content is really a final product of us 3 coming together of I come up with the audio, or this person sees the trend, this person films it. So we're really working really closely on each piece of content, and we're all very in close communication with each other, which helps us see these moments happening, how can we respond to it, and I think it's really valuable to have that, the built-in trust that we have, because that's why we're able to get things out quickly, but also, still have that production value and quality that we're looking for.
That's incredible.
Yeah, thank you.
So we've got just about 5 minutes left, and I think we should open it up for a question or two.
Yeah.
Does anyone have a question for us?
Saw the hand go up.
Okay, speak loud.
Oh, we got a mic
The
coming your
mic
way.
is coming.
Hello? Okay. So this is Kangaroo Willie. One of the things you guys were just talking about, we work for a company, a nonprofit, that open charter schools in the state of Alabama and support them. So we don't have much of a leeway to be fun. I just started making him, TikToks and stuff. So yes, do you have any additional advice for still being fun, but especially with the political climate, not crossing those lines?
I would say maybe fun and comedy might not be your lane. Maybe it's something educational. I'm sure there's a ton of parents and students that want to know more, want to know if they're making the right decision. What is a charter school? All that kind of stuff. And being genuinely helpful in that regard might be better in service of your goals of just getting out there, getting attention, all the things you want as a brand marketer.
And I would add that comedy is just truth, right? So comedy is pointing out the truth of something. I don't know if anyone's a fan of like Abbott Elementary, which comes to mind. There's so many that is a heartfelt show with heartfelt moments. And I think there's a lot of beauty in empathetic, the work that you're doing is incredible. Thank you for doing that work, right? Because our kids need help and education. But I'd focus less on the joke or the punchline or the buzzy thing and just get to the heart of, some of the stuff that resonates the most is just speaking to, oh my gosh, yes, that's me. And that is what comedy is. So don't take the pressure off of yourself to just do the detail, but don't worry about the punchline. Yeah, good question. Maybe we've got time for like one more. Anybody else? Oh, she's right here in the front. Oh, sorry. We've got one right here, and then we'll take the one that you saw.
Hi.
Hello.
So kind of similar to her question, but I'm a social media manager for a marketing agency. Sorry, can you hear me? So, but I work with a lot of like smaller local businesses, and sometimes we're not able to get all of the assets we need or able to be like super trendy and on top of it. So what would you suggest whenever you're limited on assets and brand voice and stuff? How do you still reach an audience and get good engagement?
I would say from the Liquid Death perspective, we believe in the power of the haiku and putting limitations on yourself to get good creative. You just need an iPhone. Maybe get a gimbal. You don't need to overproduce anything. But what I would recommend anybody in the agency world, especially in the social world, regardless of your size, you need to have an attribution model. These companies are trusting you with a ton of cash to do a thing. And if you can't go back and credibly say, this money in did that for your business, whether it's awareness, conversion, whatever it is, you'll be the first to be cut when times are tough. And there's a lot of ways to do it. I need another hour. I could go through what we do as a startup, but there's a lot of pressure because we're a startup. Every dollar has to 10x. But focus on that, and then you'll unlock resources.
And to add to Dan's point about, I think that you only go out with 2 hits a month, and I think prioritizing quality and a strong idea and concept over churning out as much content as possible, I feel like is a good priority to have in order to create better content. Because if you're limited on assets, I think just being able to leverage the ideas on those alone and putting more energy into that is definitely most valuable. Yeah.
I think we had one more question over here. Right here? Go for it.
Hi, can you hear me?
A little
Hey.
louder if you can.
Okay.
Great.
Hi. I run the social media for a nonprofit for grieving kids. It's called Experience Camps, and something that we really dug into is irreverent humor. And something that I've been trying to like convince the people that I work with is kind of this idea of the writer's room and how like important that collaborative like back and forth is, as well as this seems a little silly, but you know, like commenting as a blue checkmark verified account and how like big that is on social media. And I was just like wondering, how do you guys, when it comes to, you know, breaking into a really niche space, create a moment for yourselves, you know?
That's a great point. And I think that with different brands and different niches and communities that there are on social platforms, I think there is different moments for different brands. I don't think that one trend every brand should follow, and I think that there are moments that could possibly lead to something that honestly calls you up to the stage. I think for the first thing that I think about is when somebody had their whole car burned down, but the one thing that kept was the Stanley Cup, and the president of Stanley, you know, gave them a free car. And I think that, you know, finding your moment, I think it's you can't wait for it. It just has to organically happen. And I know it's really much easier said than done, because I think we chase that feeling of virality and that high. And I think that I don't want to be like, oh, it's just gonna come, but I think that there is a moment where it'll feel right and it'll feel authentic, and that's when it's gonna come from the most authentic perspective. Because if you're just trying to, you know, put yourself into a moment that doesn't feel as conceptually strong, it may not feel as authentic as you want it to be. So.
Yeah. A final thought from you, Dan?
Yeah, the only thing I have to add is that it gets better over time. If you're trying to be irreverent and funny, those small wins build. If you're consistent with them, you get more followers. It goes to a bigger amount of followers. You start to get a little bit more press. All of a sudden, the C-suite realizes, wait, this is making us money. So stick with it. Don't expect there to be a slot machine lottery win that all of a sudden it's there. Small bets are great, and keep at it. Have fun.
Amazing. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your time. Dan, Kelsey, thank you for sharing your wisdom, and we'll talk to you soon.